kind of like feeling like, oh, there's stuff on my mom's side.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Today, we've got a really exciting panel of faculty members from the College of Pharmacy, Pharmaceutical Sciences program. My name is Erin Edmonds. I'm the Experiential Education Coordinator for the Pharmaceutical Sciences program. For the students that we have with us tonight, I do want to make you aware we are recording this so that we can post it on the College of Pharmacy's website. So feel free to keep your cameras off. That's totally fine. At this point, I am going to turn it over to our moderator for the evening. Olga Skendi is with us. She's a graduate student within the College of Pharmacy. So I'll go ahead and let her introduce herself and then turn it over to our faculty members. Once again, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Olga. Thank you for joining our Faculty Hour panel today. And some background on me, I graduated back in 2019 from the BSPS program at URI, and I'm currently a grad student in my second year here. And joining us today, we have different professors at URI. We have Dr. Ross, Dr. Rowley, and Dr. Robinson. We'll go through and have our panelists give an introduction on themselves and some of the research they're going through. And then we can go ahead and ask more questions. And students, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat, and then we'll save some time at the end to go through any questions you may have. So panelists, if you could please just give us an introduction, tell us about yourself, your background, where you went to school, and some of the research that you're currently working on.
Shall I go first, Olga?
Sure, go ahead.
You called me first. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Jamie Ross. I'm assistant professor at the College of Pharmacy and also at the George and Ann Ryan Institute for Neuroscience. I am a neuroscientist by training. I joined URI in 2019. So it's been just under 4.5 years, or just around there. And I'm so excited to be at URI and be in Rhode Island. And some of the things that we are working on is my lab really studies aging and age-related diseases. And we take a multifaceted approach to try to understand how the brain and the body are affected by aging and to try to harness therapies so that we can extend our health as we get older and decrease the number of years that we may be in sickness. So in particular, we're looking at mitochondria, the energy power, and what cells do as we get older and how our metabolism changes. They also have their own MTD and own little DNA. So we look at mutations that may harbor there with age. And then we look at how epigenetic alterations change when we get older. So how gene deregulation changes with age that may contribute to Alzheimer's disease. And a newer project that I started here at URI is about plastics. You may have heard of them. They're all the rage right now in the news, and how microplastics may affect our health as humans, their life cycle in the body, and how they may contribute to disease, in particular neurological disease. I'm a native of Southern Vermont. I received my bachelor's degree in neuroscience with a minor in fine arts from it's a small liberal art. I the health for out if I wanted to go to or become a researcher. I settled on obviously the latter. I got my PhD Institutet in Stockholm, Sweden. That was in a program with the NIH, and I was there for about 6 years. And then I stayed on for an additional 2 years as a postdoc, came back across the pond to the United States, settled at Harvard Medical School in Boston for a couple years, and then I found my way here. So hope to have some more interesting questions, but that's about me.
Dave, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dave Rowley. I'm a professor in the Department of Biomedical and Pharmaceutical Sciences. I've been at URI since 2001. Before that, I got my PhD in oceanography. So I'm a little bit of a different type of scientist than most of my colleagues here in the College of Pharmacy. Although I consider myself mostly to be an organic chemist and maybe a little bit of a microbiologist as well. Some of my interests include, not surprisingly, studying organisms from the marine environment, especially bacteria and other microorganisms for the molecules that they make. I'm very interested in chemical communication between microorganisms and also the discovery of potential new antibiotics because we need them to combat drug resistance. And one of the things that I'm really interested in these days is how molecules get transported between cells by the bacteria themselves. So you take a lipophilic molecule, how does it move through an aqueous environment? Well, there's some pharmaceutics involved in the microbial level and how microbes are able to formulate their molecules for drug delivery purposes. So we're trying to learn something about that, and maybe it'll help influence the way that we design new drug delivery systems of the future.
Sean?
Hello, good evening. Sean Chen, and I joined URI about 9 years ago, and currently associate professor in pharmaceutics track. And before I joined the URI, I did my postdoc training at Massachusetts General Hospital, and I got my PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology. And after my graduation, the training is mainly like vaccination and drug delivery. And currently my research mainly focuses on like a heavily vaccine-related research. And one area we are focusing on is to develop a virus-like particle-based universal influenza vaccine. And this is to address the many shortcomings of the current influenza vaccines. For example, we have to receive vaccination every year. And second, it does not generate a good immune response in the elderly. Okay, so the first project is to develop a highly immunogenic universal influenza vaccine by taking advantage of our recently developed highly immunogenic virus-like particle platform. And the second project we are focusing on is to develop effective adjuvants to boost mRNA vaccination. We know mRNA vaccine has been very successful for the COVID-19 disease virus, but it faces some challenges to generate effective immune response against the influenza type B virus and also to treat tumor. Okay, and so we are identifying novel adjuvants which are effective to further boost mRNA vaccination. I think currently I stop here. Yeah.
Great, okay. And I'm John Robinson. I'm a professor in biomedical and pharmaceutical sciences and the psychology department here at URI. I've been at URI for about 6 years. Going backwards, I was at Stony Brook University for about 25 years. I was a professor there, and I got my PhD at the University of New Hampshire, and then did a postdoctoral fellowship at the National Institutes of Health before going to Stony Brook. So I'm fairly recent to URI, though I'm getting a little settled here. So I'm a behavioral neuroscientist by training and by trade, I guess, what I do. So I work primarily with rodents. And studying behavior and using them primarily as models of humans, as stand-ins for humans for various kinds of studies. So part of what I do, for example, is work with another professor in BPS, Dr. Bill Van Nostrand, who develops novel models, these being usually rats or mice who've had human genes either knocked into their genome or where the genes have been edited in such a way that they produce pathology relevant to dementias. That way we can use them as model systems. We do some drug development work. I've done a lot of neuropharmacology over my career and such, where we're hoping to develop new medicines for treating dementias and related disorders. The other way we can use them is to understand how various risk factors are involved. So genetic risk factors, but also environmental risk factors. Some of those factors are potentially positive. So things like exercise, we know, is a very important health promoting activity for lots of diseases, but also in maintaining brain health and preventing dementia. Diet's another very important factor that we study, as well as things like cognitive stimulation and social support. All of those can be modeled and simplified, but modeled in rodents. So people run on treadmills. You can actually have rats and mice run on treadmills or in running wheels. And similarly, you can control dietary factors in the same way. So that allows us to understand in very precisely and controlled ways whether drugs may be beneficial. We call that preclinical work, or whether various lifestyle factors, how much or how long you need to exercise, or how various factors can interact in precisely controlled conditions that allow you to make inferences that then can be in support of human epidemiological studies and clinical studies. Ultimately, we hope to promote, give us better understanding about how these various risk factors and then potentially medicinal therapies can be useful for preventing and treating dementia. So that's my story. And then my cat, by the way, was Emma. She always seems to make an appearance wherever I'm on a Zoom call, but she's gone away for now. So, since she made an appearance, I thought I'd introduce her too.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone on our panel, for your introductions. It's definitely really great to see all of the work that goes on at URI. Next, I will transition and ask some questions, and I really encourage an open discussion. And so feel free to keep your microphones on and really bounce or add in off of one another wherever you feel you would like to add in information. And so I'll ask you that, in your opinion, as professors and researchers at the university, what do you feel that this program offers to students that's unlike other institutions or different programs here at URI?
I can begin.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that I would say about especially our pharmaceutical sciences program is that you get a really broad background in all of the allied sciences that pertain to human health. So let's say that you're somebody that likes science, chemistry, biology, pharmacology. Maybe what also excites you is the aspect that we can figure out how diseases are initiated and perhaps create treatments for those diseases or conditions. And now is perhaps one of the most exciting times in human history for all of the new technologies that are being developed in order to understand disease progression and cause and how we may treat them. Things like gene editing, or ways that we can use proteins and other macromolecules to treat disease. Where else are you going to get that type of information in an undergraduate program? So you can combine your interests in multiple areas of science. And while you may come at it from maybe from more of a chemistry perspective or a biology perspective, you can blend all of these different fields into one area for understanding better how you can be a scientist who can participate in improving human health. Where else can you find that? I don't know of any such place. And so if you want to become a research scientist like those of us who are on the panel tonight, it's a fantastic place to do that. If you want to become a healthcare practitioner, let's say you want to pursue an MD someday, dynamite undergraduate program for preparation for those career pathways as well. So I'll stop right there, but that's my 2 cents.
Do any other panelists have any take on what you really think?
And I would invite some of my my panelists to also talk about the bachelor's degree in neuroscience and how it is integrated with pharmaceutical sciences, or how one might be able to do that if they so choose to do so.
I can jump in a little bit. So, right, that's always the one of those burning questions. There's also some students are interested, as well as the BS in psychology for certain certain tracks, as Dr. Rowley said. So, yeah, I think I usually, the neuroscience major at undergraduate track that is in neuropharmacology could be very appealing. Again, it can, as Dr. Rowley said, if you have pre-medical or pre-health sciences orientation, you check a lot of those boxes as well, just like with the BSPS. It's also possible to customize a BS in psychology in a similar way to make sure you have all those pre-medical or pre-professional requisites. So that is, by the way, Emma, if you can hear that she's, yeah. So anyway, but I think a lot of it might also be, a sort of which cohort you want to be with. So in other words, the other students you may interact with. So if people are, I don't know a tremendous amount about the BSPS students because I haven't taught in that area. But I think it's also, as part of the decision where to emphasize, your time and your effort, to consider the context that you're in as well, because you're going to basically be able to get most of the same kinds of things that will get you to your next step. So it's also which community you want to be part of and where do you feel that is the best fit for you, rather than thinking of it as, competitive advantage next or that sort of thing. So that would be my thought about that. So for example, if you're not feeling like you're in the right group, or the courses you're taking, there's just too many you're struggling with, then it may require a little bit of soul searching and reflecting and say, maybe I can still get to the same place ultimately by shifting a major to something else. Because again, first and second year students often are thinking about changing majors. They've chosen one initially, you're wondering, it's very common to change a major, that's okay. But as I say, I think a lot of it is making sure that you feel comfortable with both the community and the courses, et cetera, that you're taking. So that would be my.
Yeah, and a lot of BPS faculty also are neuroscience, as Dr. Rowley and Dr. Robinson are mentioning. So for example, in my lab, I have BSPS students. And one thing I think that's great about the BSPS program is that you have to do 2 semesters of independent research. So I get a lot of, and that'd be BPS 497, 498. And I really like that the students come in and they're all enthusiastic, even if they've never worked in a wet lab before and they want to try. And so we gladly take students who are interested. It's worked out really well in the 4 years that I've been at URI. The students have gone on to pursue PhDs. One is moving on to medical school. Others are changing to do more like PA, other clinical type things. But I've had thus far a good track record of students who continue on in biomedical research, which I think is also fantastic. And we also get IMP students in the neuro pharmacology track. They do NEU 410. I've also had some students who are BSPS majors and IMP minors because there is a lot of overlap with some of the classes. So they're able to harness that as well.
I just wanted to add maybe a little. I think our faculties are doing very translational research, okay, and including like such as drug development, formulation, manufacturing, and like in my lab, we are doing the vaccine, developing novel vaccines. Dr. Raleigh just said screen some novel chemicals. And we have neuroscience group. We are all doing the fantastic things, and also our faculties are very hybrid and vibrant, and we have broad knowledge, in all different areas. Okay, so I just wanted to add it before probably we move to another topic.
Maybe I could just add one more thing, and that is that a lot of our undergraduate students are involved in research activities in our laboratories. So this is real life research experience. And one of the things that I enjoy most is when we have a college-wide poster conference, and I get to see all of the research that our undergraduate students are involved with. And it often blows my mind, the types of high level science and science discovery that our students are able to complete in their undergraduate years. And so this is an opportunity in our college through these programs in order to become future researchers.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Oh,
Can
go
I
ahead.
add one more thing that I just thought of too? And so I run one of the graduate student seminar series, as Olga knows, because she's in the track that I am running. And one thing that I love about the seminar series is that the grad students present once a year their research that they're doing. And it's such a diverse group of researchers. Other people have mentioned this, and Dr. Chen and Dr. Rowley, Dr. Robinson, everyone's mentioned this, that we are such a diverse group of researchers. And so there's something for everybody, I feel, if you're interested in understanding human health and interested in pharmacology or toxicology, vaccine development, neuroscience. I'm sure I'm leaving out so many other aspects. People work from bacteria all the way up to animal models and beyond. And it's just an amazing place to be part of.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And I'll add a little bit to that too, kind of like Dr. Rowley mentioned in the beginning. I know for me personally, I started at URI and I hadn't really heard of toxicology or pharmacology too much before that. And it was my drug development class, actually, where we had a speaker come in and talk about their career path with toxicology, which really inspired me to just reach out to professors in the department and get involved in undergrad research that I then came back and continued for grad school. So there's definitely that good connection where you can start things and build those connections early on that not a lot of schools have. And as we transition into this, if a student is interested in getting involved in research, but doesn't really know how to get started or how to begin the process, what recommendation or guidance would you all have for students to really get their foot in the door if they're interested?
Can we begin again? So first thing is be persistent. Track down faculty members who are doing research and don't just send them an email. Arrive at their door. Make sure that they know that you're serious about wanting to be involved in research in their laboratories, and don't take it personally if they tell you that their laboratory is full, because oftentimes there's competition among students to get into labs. We can't just take as many students as we would like because we only have so much space in order to be able to offer those opportunities. So if at first you don't succeed, ask, well, what about next semester? Could I get into another lab? Or maybe ask them, do you have a suggestion on somebody who might be looking for a research assistant? And even though you may have perused the websites and figured out a short list of faculty that are doing research that you may have interest in. If you haven't ever done research before, take a flyer on the lab that is willing to take you and pick up some research experience, and then parlay that into a next experience if it's not exactly what you want to do. So you just need to take the first step, and initiative is a key element here. It has to start with you, the student, and then you start the conversations, and then you don't give up until you have that research experience. So I'll let my colleagues comment on any bits of advice that they may have.
Sure. So those are great points, Dave. So I'll add a couple more. So I think another suggestion is after you've made that contact and you need to be prepared to make a case about what you will bring to that group. The sort of reality of real research labs. I mean, the way we teach science is lectures type classes, laboratory classes where you repeat, reproducing experiments, and then essentially having you intern or apprentice in a laboratory. And those laboratories are doing real research, and they're funded not by tuition dollars and that sort of thing. They're funded usually by grants from the federal government or the state agencies or foundations and things like that. And so the interest in doing the research is really to get the research done. So there's usually a community in the lab. There's the head of the lab, who may be one of us. We're all PIs, as it's called, principal investigators. But there are also maybe technical staff. There may be postdoctoral fellows. Those are people who completed a PhD but are not yet independent. There are graduate students like Olga working in the lab. There may be other undergraduates. There may be high school students. So in essence, you have to, it's good to make a case that you will bring something to that group, to that community. Now, obviously, you're expected to learn when you're there, so you're not bringing in, particularly sophisticated things. So you have to sort of be realistic that what you're bringing mostly is your time and your labor. And so one of the things that students have to be prepared to do is to at least be prepared to put in the hours if they're going to get deeply involved in a lab. A couple hours a week, you're just going to watch what's going on, and you may not be able to make any contribution at all. The best students I've had over the years, and I've had several hundred undergraduates in my labs, are the ones who really commit. They really are willing to make it, a major part of their life. And usually I gave them a shot, and because they said this is what they were going to do. I didn't often need specific skills because I wanted to teach them what we needed. So, so the other thing is to recognize that you're, in that sort of laboratory system, you may be pretty low on the hierarchy, because the graduate students are also learning, and it's their apprenticeship, and postdoctoral fellows are still learning. The lab is really providing an opportunity for a number of people to learn, but if people who've been in science longer than you usually know a lot more already and are contributing more. There may be a need to be very flexible in terms of what you're doing in that group. You're learning a lot just by watching and taking it all in. So as I say, it can't be, you really have to be willing to do whatever is needed to advance the projects, because again, that's real science. That data have to be delivered. They have to be delivered under a certain time frame. The labs, so in essence, I usually say to undergraduates, if you're given the opportunity, because it is very competitive, value that opportunity. Really recognize that you're in an elite group. You're having, it may mean, prioritizing the research over some of the other activities. It's a choice, but if you're serious about going into science and learning, it may be something you really want to sort of go all in on.
I wanted to say, I think we are allowed to have our good students, to get in the lab and do some independent studies. You don't need to wait like a junior or senior year. you can reach out to us and say, oh, you wanted to, do some wet lab research. We welcome you. I think you don't need to, oh, I have to wait till like the third year or fourth year. Recently, I think when I gave like 2 lectures about the vaccine in, I think, BPS 446, and we have 2 students reached out to me, but I wanted to say you don't need to wait, until you reach third or fourth year. You can reach out early to us if you love to do some research, be exposed to some lab techniques, and we welcome you, and we love to have our sophomore or students to work in the lab.
I would just like to add that one thing I always find useful is to prepare some sort of resume, CV, that's curriculum vitae, but at least, one or 2 pages of what you've done. If you don't have any experience, but maybe you've worked outside of science, that is important to me as a laboratory head or PI, because I want to know that you are committed. When you say you're going to come to the lab, whether it be for 1, 2, 3 credits, I want to know that you're actually going to show up and do what you said you're going to do, not skip days, et cetera, and maybe I or a grad student had something waiting for you to do, because it does take preparation to find projects for undergrads to contribute to and feel successful, especially when they don't come with a lot of lab experience. So, for example, in my lab, one popular experiment that works very well is to do some tissue culture experiments, or to section tissue such as the brain and then do an immunohistochemistry staining, and to go to the microscope and do imaging, and to set aside a time for students to be able to accomplish that. I need to know that you're actually going to come to the lab. So you want to demonstrate work history, whether that be, I don't know, working in a restaurant or retail, whatever it may be, and communicate that to us that you are dedicated.
And I have another comment too. I would say, just keep in mind that all of us talking here today, even though we've been in science for a long time, we all had a day one. And there was a time when we first stepped into the lab, and who knows, maybe it went really well that first day. I can't really remember my first day in the lab, to be honest with you, but we understand that you don't have a lot of experience, and therefore it's going to take a while in order to acclimate to any research environment. The other thing that I would say is that many students maybe think that they need to wait until their junior, senior year so that they have a lot of the foundational courses under their belt. And maybe there are some faculty that might agree with that philosophy, but I'm not one of them. I think that students can begin doing research early on in their academic careers. I've taken students as early as their freshman year, and it takes a lot of time to train somebody in the laboratory. And once you have a skill set, you start to develop that toolbox, so to speak, you become more valuable within that laboratory. And the longer that you stay working in the lab, because the pace of research is often slow, you have the opportunity then to really participate in progress and perhaps discoveries, and maybe end up one day with your name on a paper, which is what most people hope for, when they're starting out on a research project. So, so having the time in order to be able to invest, not just during the semester, but even from semester to semester, is really valuable.
I was just going to say that because, oh, sorry, Sean, go ahead.
Sorry, I mean, I can give a suggestion to our students. I think each lab has probably multiple of, a bunch of techniques, you can learn. Don't aim don't think you will you can learn all the techniques in one semester.
Mhm.
I think one recommendation is focus on one or two techniques and make sure you fully understand, be able to independently perform. And don't think, okay, I wanted to learn all the techniques, but I don't fully understand. I cannot perform, by myself, okay, independently. So find one or two techniques you are interested most, and then have a very good understanding, be able to independently perform. So as you get out of school, when you do the job interview, when you are asked about the technical related questions, you will be able to answer concisely and completely. So that will be good. Okay, sorry, John.
Oh, no, that's great. Yeah, I think that a lot of we're converging on the idea that it takes time and both commitment within, let's say, a week, an average week, and also over the long term. So a student, let's say, who gets into a lab as a sophomore and stays for 3 years is going to obviously grow much more and acquire more techniques. And also we'll talk about the letter of recommendation, because in addition to course credit, that recommendation for medical schools, medical PA programs, graduate school is really critical, and especially coming usually from the PI or some of the other senior scientists in the lab. And the more they've seen you work and the more critical you become for that team, the more invested they are in you, and the more likely that letter is going to be able to talk a lot about all the things you did over the years and how critical you became to the team, and how you work well with others and are reliable and trustworthy. Because again, that's part of the, it's real science. We all have to, it's, the data are real. So everyone needs to approach the work at the highest level of care. It's highest level of integrity. Even though you may be an undergraduate working in the lab, that those same expectations apply. So a lot of getting involved deeply is to recognize and learn those things, not just how to run a gel or whatever, but to understand the culture of science and the values of science as well. And that also takes time to develop. I also, my last little plug, of course, is the more time you're in the lab, the more chance you have to interact with the folks in the lab and have those kind of aside conversations that help you with career choices and things like that. It's not all about getting the data. It's also having those conversations and having the more people who are farther along. Even if it's an undergraduate talking about the grad school and so the grad student and saying to like Olga, what's it like, or where are you, or talking to the postdoctoral fellow or the PI, how'd you get here? What was your first day in the lab like, 27 years ago or whatever. All those kind of conversations occur while everyone's doing everything else, but they're very, very important for enculturation, for understanding internalizing the values of and what science is, because it's a strange profession.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And to kind of add to that, is there any opportunities for collaboration amongst different labs, different universities, or within students within your lab that are available for students that may be interested in joining?
Do you mean, do we do collaborative work, or are there specific opportunities now?
Just in general, is there collaboration that occurs in your labs amongst the lab itself, different labs across the university or schools, or you just want to talk about your experiences with that a little bit?
I think everyone runs their lab a little bit differently. So in my lab, each PhD student has their own project, but they help each other do certain experiments together. So even though they stand on their own project, they help. We try to have everyone work as a team. And so when an undergrad will come in, typically they work closely with a graduate student who is more advanced. Sometimes they may also work with myself or other senior faculty in the lab. And but sometimes the undergrad may move from one project to another as well when there's opportunity. It doesn't have to just stay with that one particular grad student. So there is collaboration within the team in the lab. And then we also collaborate with other labs at URI in different colleges. We also collaborate with other institutions in the United States and beyond. We have collaborations in Japan, in Sweden, for example. And in Portugal, that's another example. So we do a lot of collaborative work as much as we can.
Yeah, I think you'd be hard pressed to find any research group that functions truly independently. I think science is inherently collaborative these days. And again, as Dr. Ross said, it has to happen within the lab group, but it also happens dynamically with, at the university, depending on the project, and then outside the university, virtually everybody. And that's part of what, you learn is that there's a broad network of that's almost necessary these days to advance the science.
Yeah, I think collaboration is one of the most exciting parts of what we do. I love working with people from so many other different scientific disciplines, whether it's marine scientists or microbiologists, or even now computer scientists who can bring some kind of maybe an ML or AI kind of component to the research project. Because when people can blend their expertise together, exciting possibilities emerge. So undergrads should welcome the opportunity to get into a lab and just start to find as many interesting people to pick their brains and to find out what they do and how they do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As we work more and more in the area became narrower and narrower. So in many times, whatever in doing project or applying grants, we need a collaboration. We need collaborators. So I think almost probably in every lab, I think we need internal and outside collaborations. And I think also in my team, I think different lab members, they collaborate each other. So when they publish, they can co-author each other's publications, and we encourage collaboration.
And within your labs individually, do you think there are any particular skill sets, whether it be scientifically or as individuals, that you really value and you like seeing in students? Whether it be a different specific lab technique that you work on very much, or just different motivational type of qualities that a lot of your students exemplify or that you really appreciate in a student?
At least from my perspective, I'm less interested in specific techniques and more interested in a mindset about thinking logically and thinking about data. So a sort of critical thought about what am I doing, whether it's a bench assay, watching a rat behave, pouring through even numbers in published literature, where one is curious and logical and thoughtful about what the relationship is between the data and the broader ideas, whether they're theories or that sort of thing. That part is essential to me and can be developed, obviously. But if you're not curious and you just want to be shown how to do something, again, you're not going to go very far. But if you're really thrilled, so at least one of the things I remember early on. I don't remember my first day in my first laboratory experience, but I remember being kind of obsessed with this, and it was a very focused literature, but I wanted to read everything about it. And I had a million questions. And it became, and maybe I'm atypical, but I know a lot that was what drew me in, was wanting to know more about this thing, whether it was by reading or whether it was by working in the lab and being able to do some experiments or helping someone do an experiment. And that was the sort of, I've never, never changed in that regard. So, I mean, that's what I look for, is really an attitude, a real sort of sticking power to want to be that sort of person.
My advisor from St. Lawrence, where I was an undergrad, told me you have to have the fire in the belly. Have to understand. It's all about wanting to understand either how the rat is working, the mouse is working, the brain is working, the vaccine's working, the
structure of this protein.
how yeah, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's that fire in the belly to want to know more and to not stop until you figure it out. And that is what will make you go to the lab every day and want to pursue it.
And it's often a very small thing.
Yeah.
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 The rest of the world is concerned, it's really tiny and you're obsessed with it.
Exactly. I mean, for me in grad school, I have to know about mitochondria. I became, as we say, a mitochondriac. Just have to know. And you just become obsessed with it. And, how does, of course, I'm a neuroscientist, so why do some people age and they don't see so much disease in the brain and others do? And what is going on with these A beta plaques? I mean, so have to know in the belly of wanting to understand, and that will work with you when you do. It doesn't work. We have all sorts of memes in the lab. Here's where you're due to die over the Western blot analyzer, because you put your gel there, your membrane, and then your experiment goes to bits. But that fire in the belly is what pulls you through to want to do it again, because you want to know.
Well, I'll just add, Dr. Ross is frozen because, it takes a lot of time to get those answers. And that's why this internal motivation, and you may not have that focus initially, but you learn to love the thing that the lab is studying. Back to Dr. Rowley's point about, you may be interested next, but the lab Y has an opening. So go in there and check out what they do. And you may find that you get that fire from, you didn't think you were going to be interested in bacteria, but suddenly you are. And then there's a bunch of questions that you can't, sleep without answering. Well, it's not that bad, but, you really are motivated to try to participate in. But part of the issue is the research takes time. And as Dr. Ross says, there's a lot of setbacks, et cetera. There's no quick answers to things. I mean, most of us persist on things for years. So as I say, that's why that motivation, that passion is so critical.
Active in learning, and I think usually we assign our undergrads to some graduate students, and sometimes they may go to other place to do something else, and you come to the lab and you find, oh, he or she is not there, so you just left or you just stay in the lab. And so be more active. I mean, if you find other lab members, you're doing something, and you can ask, whether I can, learn from you, And you don't need to just stay in the lab or leave the lab when you find the assigned people student is not there. So I mean, make for you the whatever 3, 6, or 9 hours like you commit for the independent study.
And to kind of slowly start to wrap up, just any final practical advice you would have for students, whether they be students currently at URI in their first or second year, or upcoming students, whether it be regarding research, getting involved, being a student, any advice you would have?
My advice is to get involved in research. If you're in a scientific major, and one of the possibilities is that your career may involve doing scientific research, then what are you waiting for if you don't get involved early on? Maybe you'll find out that the laboratory environment is really not for you. Better to find out early. Or maybe you'll find out that you never want to leave the lab. And there are some people like that. We're examples. So, in other words, just do it. Like, start putting out the feelers for, are there research opportunities that are going to open up in the fall or the spring? How do I get involved? Can I, if you don't have a space for me in your lab this semester, can I come to your group meetings and just learn about what you're doing? Maybe that way I can start to understand what's happening, and then I'll have my foot in the door. And then when the next position opens up, you'll be available. You'll be first in line.
One of the biggest wasted resources on campus is faculty office hours. And in the old-fashioned ways, we would be sitting in our office and waiting for somebody to come in, talk about a class. But what I mean by that is that students often have the opportunity to have very informal conversations with faculty members. And I can give, the best opening question that any undergraduate can ask, no matter how intimidating we look, is, tell me a little bit about how you got to be here in your career. Just an open-ended question like that can start a watershed conversation. But so few people ever come in to talk in that way, so it allows you to even try out some, again, a session like this is great, but you can always follow it up at any time with a professor. Let's say it doesn't even have to be someone you're taking a class with. Just have a conversation. Sometimes, people come and say, oh, I would like to do an informational interview. Oh, that's so formal sounding. Just come in and chat. We're really not that scary. And if there isn't an office hour obviously posted or whatever, send an email to the professor or to one of the grad students and say, how'd you get to be where you are, and start that conversation. But that's another very important thing, because it's being an undergraduate is about trying out different versions of yourself. I mean, it's good to kind of interrogate those options. Yes, if you can try them out and find out, yes, I really love being a scientist, or no, I hate being a scientist, I want to do something else. It's better to discover now than in the career. My own undergraduate experience, I worked in a psychiatric hospital. I worked with a corrections officer. Let's see, I played in a band, all three of which I had deep respect for how hard those jobs were. And I ended up in that having the science epiphany occur in my last year, my senior year, that I wanted to be a scientist. So you try out different hats, but you can also have conversations about things, because, as I say, faculty are here. It's not just going to, academic advisors and such. We're happy to have conversations, help you.
On that note, people love, it's been grad students, postdocs. That's what I did. People in different careers that I thought, oh, maybe I want to be a physician. So I started asking as many physicians or physician scientists, MD, PhDs, do you like your job? How did you get on this journey? Would you have changed? What would you have changed if you could go back? Different questions like that. and people just like to talk, and the worst they can do is not answer you or tell you, no, I don't have time. So really, you have nothing to lose. Just go for it.
Yeah, I think I wanted to encourage our students to get into the lab early. Really, you don't need to wait till like a junior, senior year. In particular, if you are determined to go to graduate school, get in the lab early and find out what's your real interest. We have different labs, we are all different kinds of research. I think most likely you don't know what you wanted to do in the beginning, but if you get in the lab early, if you don't think this is the research you wanted to do in your graduate school or in your future career, you can switch to different labs. Because you get in a lab early, you have time, to try different things. Okay, so also, even if you don't want to go to graduate school, if you wanted to go to pharmaceutical company, you can learn get into some lab who focus more on like manufacturing, So because we have all kinds of labs, all kinds of opportunities to fit your needs. Okay, you really don't need to wait junior, senior year.
Thank you, everyone, for the really valuable advice and suggestions. And I can say, kind of having gone through the process, is that what you're saying very much holds true. Just really try and get involved. And being a grad student from a former undergrad involved in research, my advice would be just don't stop until you get a yes. Keep asking at different places, because experience is experience, and in any way it will benefit you. But thank you, everyone, today for your participation and all of your help.